Vice President Kamala Harris will unveil a proposed ban on price gouging. Now, Kamala's narrative is that inflation isn't real. Grocery stores are just too greedy, charging extra money for no reason. This is ridiculous. If any of you know how grocery store margins work, they are the thinnest margins of...
Yeah, dude, this is some real populist narratives right here. Hey, boys. I love that right-wing populism immediately falling apart. Democrats have to, like, literally within an ass hair move to the left. Just a little bit. Marginally, Democrats move to the left a little bit with, like, bold policy proclamations. And immediately they're like, do you know how f***ing tiny the profit margins are at corporations? Like, what are you saying, dude? Have you seen Walmart? What are you talking about? We give Walmart $6.2 billion in subsidies per year. They made $147 billion in profit in 2023. It's also like 50% owned by the Walton family still. So like, there's like 7 people that we gave half of $147 billion in profit to. And these motherfuckers are still like, it's not enough. Permanent profits. It's not enough. Fucking die. If you're working poor, you deserve death. You deserve death and destruction. Because we need to move profit margins by 1% extra, which means like $7 gorillion for 7 people. It's the working poor saying the same shit too. They don't know any better, brother. They don't know any better. They've never lived in a world where like we've actually moved in a leftward direction. With the exception of some civil liberties, we've never actually seen any kind of like economic prosperity. That's why.
The Democrats are trying to say, well, corporations are greedy and they're just price gouging. We know why prices are going up. When you have more dollars in the system than goods and services, prices go up. Inflation is the most proven way to crush an economy in a country. Government overspending is the reason why you get inflation. And Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote on trillions of dollars of unnecessary government overspending that flooded the zone with dollar bills and has raised your grocery prices.
He's straight up defending corporations here and not even doing a good enough job like tying it back to the individual consumer and how this will harm them.
So now she's saying we are going to do price controls. This is terrifying. If she were to win, she would then be at war against one of the most firmly settled rules of economics. Literally 1700 years ago, the Roman Emperor Diocletian tried to stop inflation with an edict on prices. During the French Revolution, the revolutionary government passed the law on the maximum of the maximum, capping prices on food. It failed. Instead, what did it lead to? Famine. If you come in with price controls, you are going to have food shortages.
Why? Walk me through it. Are you saying that we are at the behest of corporate entities that will refuse to continue producing? First and foremost, there is not a single agricultural producer in this country that does not open up their hand and take billions of dollars in subsidies from Big Daddy government in an effort to already keep prices adjusted. So if they say no, okay, seize them. Seize those agricultural producers and bring them under the big banner of government. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to go against the American government? What are you crazy? This is why I don't have that much of an issue with like the way that China operates. Can you imagine a world in which like agricultural producers in China go against the Chinese government? They're like, excuse me, sir. We actually want to make sure that we keep prices high. Can you imagine? Immediately, they'd be like, good one. Okay, you're going to jail. That's it. What a ridiculous, nonsensical proposition. There is no world in which our agricultural producers do not operate without American subsidies. We pay for that, jackass. We pay for those subsidies, and then they still turn around and they're going to do what? They're just not going to produce food at reasonable levels? Oh, no. Oh, no. That's so sad, bro. That's so sad. They're just not going to produce because they're going to limit supply because they can't make a tidy profit margin. Okay, institute the Defense Production Act instantly. And if they don't comply, seize it. Subsidies for corporations is ingrained in the Republican platform. Necessities and groceries should be fixed margin, low profitable businesses. Kroger and Walmart could be nationalized and it would improve the working class living by a vast amount. Solve wealth inequality. This is not communism or Red Scare tactic. This is smart economics. Republicans, inflation is a huge issue. Biden and Kamala own it. We need to check these corporations. Propose a ban on price gouging. This is unacceptable and disqualifying. Worst policy ever. These idiots aren't even trying. Just be honest and say policy is irrelevant to you and you're against the Democrats no matter what. Spare us of the time and fake outrage. You can't identify a farm. Shut the f up. Immediately trying to hit like an American mythical farmer, you know? Bitch, the farmers are also suffering from corporate price gouging. What, the farmer eats his own corn? Is that all he's doing? He's just shoving corn in his asshole? That's what it is? The farmers that you give a about are the ones who own the farms. That's it. But the farmers that you constantly bring up as a defensive shield are also getting ass blasted by goddamn corporate price gouging. Look at that. Greedflation caused more than half of last year's inflation surge. Study finds as corporate profits remain at all-time highs. Wow. Shocking. From the communists over at Fortune, dude. This is why I was saying, like, a lot of people constantly fucking lie and yell at leftists and progressives for saying objective truths. Being a leftist is about being right just too early, always and forever. And people still get negatively polarized against you, and then they just move on. They might arrive at your position a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, when it's far too late down the line, and it still doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because they already have that resentment towards you. That's it, though. It's always the same. Same shit with Israel. Same shit with swapping out Kamala Harris, or swapping out Biden with Kamala Harris. That's why I say history will absolve me no matter what. We've been saying it's greedflation, that corporations have just kept prices high and increased it regardless. And it's like, oh, you're just making that up. You just hate the wealthy. You just keep saying wealthy people bad. That's it. Please believe me, it is not actually corporations keeping prices high. It's not. It's actually, they just have no other way. They just have no other way to do it. Remember when they said that about the bird flu too? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Corporations have one speed. They're always going to lie to you. Remember when I told you Walgreens was lying when they said that they were closing up shop in Oakland and in San Francisco because of retail theft, and it was getting out of control for them, and that's why they were closing up shop in San Francisco? And I told you that that was a lie, that they were trying to use a very popular narrative that was already running amok in the media to shelter the truth, to hide the real reason. It's because Amazon is cleaning out their pockets, and brick and mortar sales are too costly because real estate prices affect them negatively as well. Remember when I told you that, and everyone told me I was a radical, that I love crime, and I just like don't want to admit that black people are doing crime all the time or some shit, like, you know, racialized sentiments in the chat over and over again. And then a year later, the CFO of Walgreens was like, yeah, my bad. We actually lied about that completely. I live in a gated community, and that's why I don't understand it. That's what they were saying. People love talking about how I live in a gated community, apparently. News to me, by the way, whenever they're defending Walgreens.
And now she's spelling out more of her communistic policies. So, as of today, she's going to call on Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging as part of her economic platform, according to Politico, to lower grocery prices and everyday costs. This is idiot policy. Passing federal laws on price gouging on groceries is idiot policy. The reality is that in the grocery industry, profit margins are well under 2%. There's very, very little profit margin in the grocery industry because it's really competitive. There are tons of groceries. There's tons of supply. There is no shortage of food in the United States. And so the idea that it is monopolistic companies price gouging people, and that's why the prices have gone up, is insane. First of all, price gouging in general is almost always crap, because the reality is that prices are determined by supply and demand. But there is no actual definition for price gouging, because it turns out that, according to Democrats, price gouging is just prices they don't like because it makes...
Hey, by the way, just because a grocery store has a different name and there's like 3 of them in a row in your neighborhood doesn't mean that they're not owned by the same company. Just so you guys understand. That's number one. Number two, grocery stores have increasingly merged with one another, and there's a massive merger in play right now as we speak. The last 2 major grocery stores have been trying to consolidate. So just understand that Ben is just straight up lying to you when he says there's a tremendous amount of competition in the grocery chain, in the grocery store business. Ben's also lying about the price, the profit margins that he's talking about, as far as the grocery business being too hard to, I mean, they're just like, they're voluntarily offering, these incredibly low price points, even though it's just crazy. It's just it's such a hard industry. Why is he lying is the question? Because he's a right-wing bullshitter. I already went into detail about how companies engage in price leadership, especially when they have corporate consolidation in this sector. And grocery stores, of course, have massive corporate consolidation. And it is very easy under an oligopolistic structure to engage in what is known as price leadership. The other side of this issue is that, what are you supposed to do? Not eat food? Like, what the fuck do you mean? What's the alternative here? Corporations can bring up the prices. There's no competition, which he's lied about. What are you going to do? Not eat? Good luck.
If she believes that she is going to bring down prices through price controls, this has been tried. It is Soviet-style policy. It is Cuban-style policy. It is Venezuelan-style policy. Simply declaring that the price of a product shall be X does not guarantee the widespread availability of that product. In fact, what it leads to is a spur in demand and a reduction in supply.
Why, Ben? More people can buy food. They're going to eat. Why is that going to decrease supply? Why can't supply keep up with the amount of purchase? It always does. It always has. We have so much surplus, dude. We literally dump a shit ton of food. We do not have a shortage of food. Ben already admitted that. Not only do we already not have a shortage of food, we literally waste a shit ton. That is because we want to maintain the same prices for food. If we didn't dump all the food that we're not consuming, then all of a sudden prices would get lower. And then companies would not want to, yield the same level of crop. What other people are not considering, or what Ben is not considering in this situation, is that there's subsidies all the way anyway. These companies are already completely subsidized by the government. So we have subsidies that taxpayers are paying for to make the production of this food as cheap as possible. Then beyond those subsidies, we're also paying in subsidies in the form of like welfare to companies like Walmart and whatnot that take advantage of the social safety nets that kind of exist. They're not great by offering the lowest amount of wages they physically can get away with. Then also, food stamps, EBT, obviously SNAP benefits that those very same workers utilize at the store, mind you, double dipping into the profits. And this dipshit is over here acting like there's nothing we can do. If these guys say, oh, sorry, we can't keep supplying you because price points are too low, prices are too low for us, we just can't keep supplying the same level of food, then you institute the Defense Production Act. If they don't change their attitude, then you take it over, seize it.
But it's actual terrible policy. Every economist understands, right, left, center, unless you're like a full-scale Marxist, that price controls are some of the worst policy you could possibly implement. And obviously she's pushing it because she is of the opinion that Americans are too stupid to understand what price controls are.
Dude, the funniest part about it is that he relies on how stupid his audience is to advocate for something that only benefits corporations, not even do a good enough job in his advocacy, because he knows his audience is so fucking dumb and they trust him that they won't realize that this is purely against the interests of his own audience, of the citizens. He's putting profit over people and not even doing a good enough job with like the messaging, knowing full well that these guys will just like eat out of his hand no matter what.
But according to Politico, of course, it's a political move, right? Elevated everyday costs have plagued the Biden-Harris administration since Americans' grocery bills spiked during the pandemic. Even with some promising recent polling, most major voter surveys show President Biden and Harris well behind former President Donald Trump on the economy.
Is Ben going to mention Trump's policies on how he's going to magically cut the price of groceries in half, as he has claimed he will do once he's president? Because like, what's Trump going to do? Like, he thinks drill baby drill is somehow going to magically translate to cheaper barrels of oil for Americans when America is exporting that oil anyway and has at times outright refused to make up for the supply shortage when OPEC Plus decided to limit the supply of oil and greatly drove up prices in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, openly stating that like their only responsibility is their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, and that no, they would not actually supply additional barrels of oil for the United States of America, for the American population, because they don't give a fuck. So Trump doing the drill baby drill attitude is not going to magically lower oil prices when the American oil giants are not even remotely interested in lowering oil prices. As a matter of fact, they take advantage of OPEC Plus increasing oil prices by limiting supply. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Biden has offered an incredible amount of new land leases in general, in terms of like opening up new wells or opening up new areas that you can engage in drilling. The American oil and gas giants do not play ball, because why should they? They own the government.
Food is not more expensive because the bread companies decided randomly to raise the prices in collusion with one another. Food is more expensive because the Federal Reserve pumped money into the economy at a rate unprecedented in human history. And then the Biden-Harris administration decided to jack more money.
Wait, who did that? Even on that front. So Biden jacked it. Who did it first? Not that it matters ultimately, but because it absolutely is not a byproduct of like 2 stimmy checks, no matter how hard these guys chirp about this shit. But instead, or the PPP loans, obviously, and instead directly related to companies genuinely doing that, genuinely increasing prices and keeping them high. Even in his own argument, he's shitting on Donald Trump. He won't say it outright because he knows his audience is stupid as
When you helicopter money on people, it doesn't make things worth more inherently. It just means the price of everything goes up. If I give everybody in the United States $10 extra, no one is any richer. It just means the prices go up by $10. That's all that happens because supply and demand. Ooh.
Market forces do not operate by magic. At a certain point, there is literally a person that is responsible for increasing prices. Like, he makes it seem like it's gravity. We already dump a shit ton of food, man. What the fuck are we talking about? The idea that supply and demand is a naturally occurring phenomenon is so insane. I don't think he believes that either.
In the middle of an inflationary spiral, she has another proposal. This one is on housing. Guess what it is? Wait for it. It's free money. I know you weren't expecting it. Free money from Democrats in the middle of a $30 trillion national debt? No, they would never do such a thing.
Oh my God, national debt. Oh, that's great. Republicans going back to deficit hawking when the toothpaste is completely out of the tube at this point. Great stuff. Please campaign on that, man. No, for sure. How about we no longer give free money to Israel? Where's your deficit hawking there, Ben? I ain't never seen you chirp about unlimited billions of dollars going to Israel, Ben. Huh? Deficit hawking only comes into play when you're talking about offering regular American working class individuals some financial help. Immediately, whoa! Calm down. We can't do that. There's a hazard there. There's a moral hazard. Unlimited funds to Israel, though, please. He doesn't give a about debt, bro. He loved the Trump tax cuts. Don't give me this shit about deficit hawking. Same with inflation, like Trump tax cuts. What do you think that did?
The Biden-Harris administration initially proposed providing $25,000 in down payment assistance only for 400,000 first-generation home buyers or home buyers whose parents don't own a home, and a $10,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. Vice President Harris's plan will simplify and significantly expand that plan by providing up to $25,000 for all eligible first-time home buyers, while still calling for a significant addition for first-generation homeowners. It will expand the reach of down payment assistance, allowing over 4 million first-time buyers over 4 years to get significant down payment assistance on average of $25,000 to get the funds they need to buy a first home. So what is that? That is helicoptering $25,000 of cash to people who want to buy a first home. Now, I have no idea what the provisions on creditworthiness are here, because it turns out they're going to flush a bunch of that money down the toilet if you are simply giving people money who cannot afford to actually pay for the mortgage. The down payment is only part of what you're paying when you pay for a house. There's upkeep, there's mortgage. Turns out owning a home, kind of expensive.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of people who have enough in their finances to become first-time home buyers, but this would be greatly beneficial for their down payment, right? Like, they have enough to pay for the mortgage, they have enough for everything else, but there's like a little bit of a budget shortfall there. Ultimately, this is not a solution to the problem. This is not even a patchwork solution to the problem at all. The reality of the matter is, obviously, the solution to the problem is deflating home prices. And the only way to do that is by increasing supply and also making it as unaffordable as possible to be a landlord. Decommodifying housing is the only way out of this problem. Ben, of course, thinks that's communism. And in some respects, it kind of is socialism. I'll be honest with you, but it's good. Not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Ben says, if unions so good, why have the American capitalist class eviscerated them so there's only 10%? Ben says, if home ownership so good, why is everybody renting? I don't know, man. Maybe because it's fucking impossible to own a home, dude. Like, what do you mean? As you always say, it's expensive to be poor. My mortgage payment is way cheaper than the rents in my area. I know. It always is, of course. Because your rent is subsidizing your landlord's mortgage. Your rent is oftentimes paying the entirety of your landlord's mortgage. And then some. The real barrier is the down payment. This is supposed to try and make up for that.
Now, remember, when J.D. Vance proposes a tax credit for new parents in order to increase the number of children being born in the United States, then that is sexist and horrifying. When Kamala Harris does it, it's genius and wonderful. The difference between the two proposals, I would assume, is that J.D. Vance's proposal actually has some work requirements attached to it, because we would like to see people be able to support their kids beyond a $6,000 tax credit. One of the things Democrats tried to do by increasing these payments during the pandemic was basically make them universal without any work requirements whatsoever, essentially implementing a universal basic income. Harris, echoing Joe Biden, wants to bring back 2021's expanded child tax credit, which was $3,600 per child under age 5 and $3,000 for those older under the American Rescue Plan. There were no work provisions under the American Rescue Plan. And so what it ended up being was just free money, helicopter.
Dude, what are we saying, brother? Dude, I love Republicans because they're just like, good things are actually bad and bad things are actually good. Most of this commentary just revolves around like, America has a lot of issues. We mustn't solve them. If you try to solve them, I will defend it tooth and nail to not solve them.
Again,
don't ban them.
This sort of stuff is for stupid people. It is economic policy that was dropped on its head as a baby. And yet Wall Street seems to be willing to dump money on her. Why? And the answer is because Wall Street is always trying to get in bed with the person they think is most powerful.
Damn, he's just recognizing that Kamala Harris is a better shot at winning than Donald Trump. Therefore, Wall Street is trying to get in bed with Kamala Harris, even though her tax policies in this regard are going to be worse for the economy overall. Only Ben knows what's good for the economy. Not Wall Street, not Kamala Harris, nobody else, just Ben.
It is not capitalism. And then when that system inevitably falls on its face because the government is bad at picking winners and losers, when those bubbles always burst, capitalism gets blamed. It's one of the perversities of the way that our system of government works under a mixed economy. Mixed economy meaning free market for some parts and government sponsored, subsidized, and run for other parts.
There's literally not a single sector that doesn't rely on government. Bro, Ben loves talking about the oil and gas industry. He is funded by oil barons, by the way, the Wilkes brothers. I believe those are the two guys. 85% of the subsidies in the energy sector go to the oil and gas industry. I ain't never heard him chirp about that. Yeah, Dan and Ferris Wilkes are funders of the Daily Wire and founders of the Daily Wire.
And so what they're hoping is that the less you see of Kamala Harris, the more you will like her, which frankly is a good strategy because the more you see of her, the more you dislike her. They put out a statement yesterday after Donald Trump had suggested that there'd be 3 presidential debates just like normal because the last candidate, died. So he has said, why don't we have 3 presidential debates? She said, no, won't do it. Quote, the debate about debates is over. I like that they can just declare this. They can just randomly declare that the debate about the debates is over. That doesn't have any sort of totalitarian overtones.
Totalitarian overtones. Kamala Stalin Harris only wanted to do 1 debate instead of 3. It's so funny. Donald Trump was literally avoiding doing any debates at all, harder than you avoid the top of the hour ad break. And now he's like, actually, no, it's Kamala Harris that's running away from the debate. There should be 1,000 debates. Let 1,000 debates bloom.
The more they play games, the more insecure and unserious Trump and Vance reveal themselves to be to the American people. Those games end now. I mean, the only campaign that's been playing games about the debates has been the Kamala Harris campaign because Donald Trump made a commitment to Joe Biden, who is no longer the actual nominee.
The more that the Trump campaign goes nutty mode, the more Ben Shapiro basically has to readjust his commentary to reflect how stupid the Trump administration is. Like, I think Ben's smarter than this. Like, I don't think Ben's a stupid guy by any means, all right? But Ben knows what his audience is, what their demands are, and has to do commentary that is adjusted to like what the candidate is. It is pretty funny for him to just blatantly disregard reality in this situation because he's just like, yeah, it's actually the Kamala Harris that's like against it. The more debates. It's like everybody heard Donald Trump run away originally from debating.
Now, the reality is that she is attempting to distance herself from Joe Biden while embracing even more communistic and socialistic policies. And she wants to have it both ways. She wants to both say that she was deeply embedded in Bidenomics and also she has no responsibility for Bidenomics. But he was saying things that she can't dissociate with because she actually requires the same voters that Biden had in the bag. So here was Joe Biden rallying with Kamala Harris yesterday saying everyone does better with more unions. I mean, if that were true, then there would be more than 7% of the workforce currently unionized in the private.
Oh my God, I hate this monstrous piece of shit.
It is eminently untrue. In fact, everyone does significantly worse with large-scale unions in the United States, consumers get absolutely screwed. Industries turn into zombie industries subsidized by the federal government. This is the story of the car industry in the 1960s and 70s in the United States.
I love this. He's like, yeah, if unions are so good, why 7%? Why 7%? We're in America. Is it because of dipshits that pay your salary have completely gutted labor unions? That's also part of the reason why there's no like mechanism of balance. It's completely out of whack. Corporations can do whatever the they want, dude.
They told me every major piece of legislation we passed to give us the strongest economy in history and the strongest economy in the world. We got more to do for working people. And by the way, everybody does better when there's more unions.
That is eminently untrue, as any business person will tell you.
Any business person will tell you. What about the overwhelming majority of the population that are workers and not business owners? I like that he said, unions are bad. Source, Jeff Bezos. Unions are bad. Source, Bill Gates. He'll tell you how bad unions are. Just understand that that's what he's saying, and that is the truth. Of course, they don't believe that. Unions are good. But try to understand how at odds Ben Shapiro is with like the average working class person when he makes these kinds of arguments. You have no idea how many union employees listen to Ben Shapiro and agree with him? No, I do. I know. Americans, unfortunately, have been fed a steady diet of bullshit their entire lives. They're primed to be reactionary, and the likes of Ben Shapiro can very easily take advantage of that messaging gap, take advantage of that lack of education. Just show them shit like this, and maybe you'll be able to convince them that he's a demon. I love this idiotic argument that unions actually bankrupt the businesses. So then what? Like unions are actually interested in like destroying the businesses? Who do you think the unions are comprised of, dumbass? It's the workers. Obviously, they're not interested in bankrupting the business that they are a part of, because guess what? Then there's no union. There's no wages and there's no labor if there's no business. What an idiotic argument.
Here she was at this rally bragging about her tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. So she doesn't want to own the inflationary record of the Biden administration, but she brags about being one of the people who was the deciding factor in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was one factor in the 40-year highs in inflation we have seen under this terrible administration.
No, he's right, dude. The Inflation Reduction Act, which came after record high inflation, was responsible for the record high inflation that preceded it. No, he's right, dude. Inflation Reduction Act actually was responsible for the inflation that happened before it, as is literally in the name, Inflation Reduction Act. It traveled throughout time and was able to increase inflation before it could reduce it. That argument is also insanely stupid from, yes, the intellectual gladiator, according to Barry Weiss, when she used to work at the New York Times, by the way. Barry Weiss wrote an article at the New York Times about the intellectual dark web, where she called Ben Shapiro an intellectual gladiator of the right. Thank you, Ben. That was cool that he just dropped that in there. But also, these guys have complained non-fucking stop about inflation, and then also said Kamala has not taken ownership over the inflation. Now she's acknowledging that inflation is still a problem and wants to do something about it. And they're like, whoa, what the fuck do you mean you want to do something about inflation? Hey, that's communism. What are we talking about? You literally chirped about Kamala Harris acting like inflation wasn't real. Okay, she acknowledged it and she said, this is my policy prescription. This is my proposal. And now they're like, no, it's additionally stupid when he keeps saying Kamala Harris has no policies, whereas like Donald Trump literally just keeps talking about inflation and he says we're going to cut prices in half, and he has yet to answer for the how. Like, he has not answered the how. How are you going to cut prices in half? It doesn't make any sense.
That's a problem for Kamala Harris, because it turns out most people don't actually like her economic policies. In fact, recent polls showed 52% of Americans do not think America should move in the direction of California. And yet the same polls are showing that 52% of Americans are going to vote for Kamala Harris. What's the disconnect? She's hiding her policies. She's hiding herself.
That's such a disingenuous way to interpret polls. You said nothing about her economic proposals. This level of disingenuous framing is so silly, dude. Come on. That's like a new low for Ben. I can't believe I'm saying this.